I'm still almost equally as confused today about how I'm really going to deploy and use AI in my organization and in what I do as I was 2 years ago, but we're taking baby steps.
It's challenging to understand what is real and what isn't. And you have to look at the business sense as to what this is.
You've got to build a foundation and then build workflows and build skill and expertise. And I feel like we're just really in the land profession starting to see what it can do.
Where it stands very much today is that it's an enhancement. It's a tool that you utilize. It's not a replacement. It's not something that's going to be able to just take over your job for you.
How can I get one more hour of time to focus on what's the most important thing? That's where you really start to plant the seed. And I think that's what we're starting to see now.
There's going to be a lot of things that are going to change. There's going to be a lot of solutions that come about. There's also going to be some new problems that pop up, but I'm excited that I'm alive to get to be part of it and to talk about it and hopefully help some people understand it better.
Land insights, market trends, industry experts. Welcome to the Land Department Podcast, the state of land and energy as we see it.
All right, round two with Mr. Jerris Johnson. I thought it was a year, but time flies. It was 2 years since you were on the podcast with us. So welcome back, man. We're glad to have you on the podcast. We're going to talk about some AI today. We're excited about that. It's kind of been front and center in our heads for a good while now. So really appreciate you coming back on.
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
In the last 2 years, Jerris, you also started a show, so the Real Deal Landmen show for
That's
people
right.
that are listening. Brett, you'll be a guest soon.
I think so.
Okay.
They've still got time to change their mind.
Okay.
Oh,
There you go.
no, I'm looking forward to it. We'll have a good time with that. So check out the Real Deal Landman show also.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that, and we'll be excited to have you on. It's interesting talking to the AI topic that we're going to be jumping into and discussing, and the fact that it's been 2 years since we last had that conversation. I mean, that's an infinity of time in this space. There are evolutions and new things coming out on almost a daily, weekly basis, and so it will be kind of curious. I think I'll likely do it is once this is all out there, go back and see what were we talking about 2 years ago versus now. Knowing myself, I probably made some predictions. It'll be interesting to see if I got any of those right.
Well, we should do our own predictions at the end of this, and then we'll come back in 2 months and I'll be wrong. But,
We'll look at us idiots. We had no idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know that I'm still almost equally as confused today about how I'm really going to deploy and use AI in my organization and in what I do as I was 2 years ago. But we're taking baby steps, and I think that's one thing we've all learned is you can't just cannonball into this. There's a process. There's a learning process. There's all these things, prompts and skills, all these terms that are starting to become more common and more understood by the professional community, I guess, and just everyday users that really empower AI and what you're doing. So,
and that's challenging, right? It's challenging to understand what is real and what isn't, and you have to look at the business sense as to what this is. I mean, you've got literally trillions of dollars that are being earmarked for AI infrastructure, data center spending, all these other things that are going to be happening worldwide. And if you look at that trickle down, I mean, the big names in this business, OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, Meta, Grok X, whatever that's called. I mean, it's to the tunes of tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions on an annual basis. And they have to make that money back, which means they have to do a lot of marketing, which means they have to do a lot of selling, which sometimes can equate to like overpromising. And I think that's left a lot of people confused on, we're being told by these wise experts out there that, it can do everything under the sun. But when I sit down and try to use it, I don't know that I'm having that same kind of result.
Yeah. And then when you say, hey, I'm not having the same kind of result, the response is, oh, you're just not using it right.
Right.
And I think there's probably some truth to that. And I think that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier is, I look at what we've done in our organization and in the field landman community and all those things. And, 2 years ago, we were like, hey, we need to take this seriously because it does have potential to change the way we do what we do and make us better and all those things. And it's really been a 2-year process for us to get to the point where only now we can really say, okay, we have enough foundational understanding that we can start taking this to the next step and really start building some skills and identifying places and areas that we can apply these resources and this tool to the work that we do. And it's baby bites, and through repetition, then you become a multiplier within your organization, within your profession. And I feel like 2 years from now, we'll really start to see the benefit of that, as opposed to what we thought it would you'd hit a button and tell it what to do and it would happen. It's not like that. You've got to build a foundation and then build workflows and build skill and expertise. And I feel like we're just like really in the land profession starting to see what it can do. And you mentioned earlier, kind of before this, and I thought it was very interesting, the tone of the people that you present to and talk to. You do a lot of that in our industry, at companies, at association events, talking about AI and how it can be used. Tell us a little bit about how that tone has changed over the last 12 to 16 months, I guess.
Yeah, it's been really fascinating to see the reactions of the audiences. And for the most part, at various associations, most of the audiences I speak to are targeted in the land profession. There have been some audiences that I've spoken to that are outside the land profession, and the extremes and reactions of people are even greater, like outside of that. I feel like within the land profession, everybody is more or less on the same wavelength and the same expectation and understanding. But when I started speaking really heavily, like you said, 12, 16 months ago, there was a lot of skepticism and warranted, but just a lot of people who were, cautious about the idea of, is this something is just a fad? Is this just something to make pictures or songs? Is this a real tool that people are going to utilize? And a lot of my conversations with folks in the beginning and presentations were just trying to introduce some of the elements and try to instill some confidence that if they try it, they'll be pleasantly surprised with the results that they get. Somewhere halfway through the year, it went from the extreme of it can do nothing to the extreme of, oh, I tried it. This is awesome. I want it to do everything for me in my life. And if it doesn't deliver that for me, then it's terrible and it's disappointed and failed me. And so
yeah, I got to try another model. Like, this is the wrong model.
Yeah, right. And so what I, towards the second half of the year, where I began to evolve that conversation with folks, is teaching them that it's a journey that's taking place. The journey from nothing to everything. And we're moving along that line from nothing to everything. And where it stands very much today is that it's an enhancement. It's a tool that you utilize. It's not a replacement. It's not something that's going to be able to just take over your job for you or do, 100, 90, 80, 70% of your job. One of the really healthy ways that I think about it, or that I encourage other people to think about it, is most of us are in a work environment where we're doing a lot of typing on computers or we're dealing with computers. And a really healthy metric to think of is keystrokes. And so how many keystrokes are you doing on a regular basis or a daily basis? And does the utilization of AI allow you to reduce the number of keystrokes that you're doing? And if you're able to reduce the number of keystrokes based on the tool or tools that you're using, then you're moving in the right direction. And that is a positive gain that it's been able to give you.
Yeah. I'm curious, we talk about it's an enhancement and not a replacement, but I think about who is it going to enhance the most? And as you're thinking about career, people entering the industry, who's going to be best set up to succeed with AI as an enhancement? So is it the specialists out there? Is it the generalists out there? How can people set themselves up to be able to really excel by using AI, in your opinion?
Yeah. Today, anybody who is doing things involving reading and writing can take advantage of it right now. And for the ability to be able to digest or analyze or look at large volumes of documents or information and be able to synthesize that into a different form, or getting assistance on writing things, or like I said, reducing keystrokes, those folks can implement it and utilize it immediately. I think there's also some utility on gaining strategy, decision making, management abilities. The caution on that is don't rely solely on AI to do that job for you. And I think there's pitfalls on folks that are relying in high level positions who are relying too heavily on what an AI bot is telling them. And what kind of impact that might issue for them. I mean, looking down the road, and this sounds cheesy, sounds corny, but I think it's true, is that for a long time, land professionals would say, well, a computer robot's never going to do my job because it can't read handwriting. Or it's never going to be able to do my job because it can't interact with other people. And we've already seen examples as to how those are happening, and they're happening really well. And the takeaway that I've gained over the last couple of years is that we can never use the phrase or the word never again.
Yeah.
So we can
It's the
never
same
say
thing.
never again.
It's
Everything
the same thing
is
your
possible
dad,
now.
same thing your dad taught you, never say never.
Yeah. And
You got to
I
understand
mean, it's
it.
real. I mean, like today we're talking about desk work, right? With reducing keystrokes and looking at things in a digital formation. But even down to up to like the ability of out in the field, humanoid robots are going to be a thing. Like that is going to happen. It's already happening. And just depending on the perspective that you see on it, like there was a marathon in China and 20 some humanoid robots ran the race, and most of them didn't even finish it. And people looked at that and laughed and pointed and said, see how clumsy, see how stupid they are. They're never going to be able to get this. Well, I look at that situation and go, are you kidding me? You had over 20 humanoid robots that attempted to run a race, and some of them finished it.
Yeah.
Next
That's
year,
crazy.
do you think that they're, the same thing is going to happen? Absolutely not. I mean, they're going to learn these things exponentially faster than what most people realize. So,
Well, I guess
to
what we
say
got to
who
ask
it's going to
ourselves.
help, it's everybody.
Yeah. What we have to ask ourselves is the clerk of court in Tyler County, Texas, going to allow a humanoid robot
Yeah.
in there? And that's the thing. I mean, I think you nailed it. You have to open your mind and have to understand that things are going to change. But the fact is, you look back at the land business 40 years ago, and they're different today. The jobs of today aren't the jobs of 40 years ago. And 40 years from now, they're not going to be what we're doing today. So you have to understand that. And it has to be an enhancement to what you do and to what you bring as a human, that human element. From a leadership kind of standpoint, you hit on how people are using it as a thought companion. We spent a lot of time focusing on how can I use this as a thought companion? What are the proper prompts? Are you doing crit analysis? Yeah, but the crit plus question, don't trust, use it to be able to bounce ideas off of you. And there's value in that. I use it. A lot of our leaders use it to kind of help solve bigger problems. But you can't depend on it. We're seeing that kind of conflict now with certain professions and use of AI. You see it in the legal space, you see it in all those places. But I think when you really start to boil it down to how can I get an hour out of my week? How can I get one more hour of time to focus on what's the most important thing for my job, the one thing, right? That's where you really start to plant the seed. And I think that's what we're starting to see now is like, oh, I'm in land administration. I have to, key in these documents into a system. How can I take a skill to read this document and get 70% of the work done that's 95% accurate? So I can spend my 30% of the time focusing on what's really important and the things that, I'm not comfortable with the system doing. And that's when you start to really get the value and the most out of that person. They're taking all their experience, they're taking circumstance, they're taking what they know and have learned in a meeting earlier in the week with their team and applying it to their job. Whereas before they had 70% of noise just doing task. And I think that's how we're going to evolve in the land business. You see it on the land side. You certainly see it in the land administration. We're seeing it due diligence, divestiture work. Maybe Jerris kind of dive into some of the actual kind of real applications that you're starting to see and folks that you talk to? Like, how are people really starting to apply it in a way that's meaningful outside of, just these grand schemes that it's going to do all our title or do all of our land administration?
Sure. I like the comments and the perspectives that you've offered, Brent, because it's a really healthy commentary, especially someone coming from the leader of such a large organization, because I can tell that you're thinking about this in a very methodical fashion. And that's really important to do because it's not an easy tool to learn how to use correctly. Like, it's an easy
God, no.
tool to jump in and try, and there's all kinds of accounts that people can get going with it. But the novelty of it wears off pretty quickly, and then it becomes, okay, well, now what do I do with this? And to actually use it effectively takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of trial and error to try and figure out, like, how is this going to be able to best be utilized for me? In terms of real world applications, the field landmen, like, everybody wants it to do title or help do title for them. But even that has a lot of complications, because let's say you have a bot that is pretty good at building a run sheet, which most of them at this point can effectively build a run sheet. But if you try to put too much trust in it on actually chaining and doing calculations, you're running into some scary territory at this point. Or how do you source the documents that's going to go into it so that you can even build the run sheet? And so there's, like, obstacles that are there. But if you approach it with an open mind and think, hey, it can do, just like you said, Brent, like, it can do 95% or 80% or whatever that is, it's going to be able to do a lot of that work to get me started. That's really helpful. So yeah, from the field standpoint, like, I think the title aspect is really promising. Run sheet generation is working really well. Chaining will come along at some point. Mapping is, I think, a puzzle that a lot of people would like to be able to solve. Internally, like with the operators, the land administration piece is working pretty well in terms of being able to run, large volumes of documents through a system and get an analysis that comes out of it, and to a pretty high degree of accuracy. So again, the things that are like reading and writing, those are pretty dominant. Field perspective, title, in-house, land administration, lease processing, et cetera. Those are probably the biggest things that people are using it for today.
Yeah. Can we dive a little bit into that field and abstract side of things? So, over the last 2 years, I guess, since we spoke originally, especially over last year, 2025 was a big year for that. We and myself have been reached out to by half a dozen different companies that have use AI to build these language recognition models to build a run sheet, right? And they're all trying to sell you on the product, and yeah, that product delivers savings, from a time standpoint. There's challenges of how you actually put that in the hands of, hundreds of landmen, thousands of landmen across our profession before you start to see meaningful change. But we always pump the brakes on, subscribing to something or buying something, because we felt pretty confident that in 12 to 18 months time, we'd be able to build it ourselves in a fraction of the time. Have you seen that? Like, when we talk about the progression of these models and people's broader understanding of how to develop these skills in these systems, do you feel like we're reaching a point where, a relatively seasoned user of AI will be able to build that kind of tool themselves, and to be able to build that run sheet module, that tool, and use it within their community, and we're not faced with this, death by subscription concept, which is a really challenge to implementation across a grand, scale?
Yeah, no, that's a great question to ask. I was having a conversation with someone not too long ago, and just philosophically, I was saying various companies that have popped up, and not just true like in land, but just across the whole space, but companies that have popped up that are based solely around AI technology. What is the threat to them when OpenAI releases a new ChatGPT model, or Google releases a new Gemini model that isn't going to instantly replicate it, but like you just explained, is going to make it much easier for those seasoned users to be able to build something for themselves. And I was talking with somebody who has one of these companies,
Yeah.
and he didn't take offense to it, but he did explain it in a great way and brought up the point that, that company has 12 months of advancement on everybody else on trying to build something utilizing the same tools that are out there. Well, when a new model comes out, they're also going to have access to that new model, which is going to allow them to take their product that they have and propel it even further than where it was before. So I think, on one hand, you could argue that perhaps it does level the playing field a little bit, but you also have to understand, are these companies that have already been utilizing today's tools, how is that going to allow them to launch and go even further? The other piece that I think is going to be a huge challenge is the scalability for it. Like, an individual user might be able to come up with something. It's a methodology or process with current or future models that allows them to build a run sheet. But is that going to be something that they can replicate multiple times, either to use with a small team or potentially build out and release to a customer base and distribute? So there's some complications that are there. I would say for individual users, the world is really exciting on the horizon for things that they'll be able to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. That's kind of the big question, right? It's like, when do you jump in? It's a big challenge for us, is how do we have resources that we can push out to our teams to make them more efficient, in a way that's cost prohibitive, because, you've got, and I certainly have a unique perspective in the business. I'm a broker. I work for clients. We're a service organization. But I'm also providing service to our contractors, giving them opportunities. Like, how do you take that and push it down? But then, how do I cover that expense, right? And how do I pass that on in a way that makes sense and is clear and open? And I think what you touched on earlier about the tone, the shift, and people's understanding, I think that makes that conversation much easier. It's like, hey, we're using this resource. It's a cost to us, but it's a savings to you in the long run, right? That's the conversation is becoming easier to have with our clients. But I think we're still a little ways off before it could be a universal thing that's really applied across the industry. But it's certainly exciting, the direction that it's heading.
Do your clients have concerns over privacy security things if you tell them you're going to use AI to help in your work?
Yes, different ones have a different level of concern. I think the conflict, if you're really going to run a business and adhere to your service agreements, is that every master service agreement that I've signed with, we build 150, 200 clients a year, right? Every one of them has confidentiality, and every one of them says you have to keep our data confidential, and you have to have cyber insurance, and you have to have all these things. And so that there are these two competing forces of what I'm obligated to do through my service agreement as the broker, as the whatever, is fighting against, well, now I have a potential cost savings for you that flies in the face of that potentially, right? Because nobody really, well, I say that nobody, the regular user really doesn't understand what happens when you dump an entire run sheet of documents into this platform and have it do X, Y, Z, or you dump a spreadsheet of your leasehold position on a project that you're doing, and you say, hey, help me build a better spreadsheet, or help me, tell me what my net revenue interest would be in, these 50 tracks, right? Like, where does that go? And how can I ensure as the person, the responsible party, somebody's responsible for things, and ultimately it's the broker. I signed the service agreement. How am I responsible for that data? And how can I tell my client ultimately when it hits the fan a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever, that I did the appropriate things? And the fact is, like, I don't think anybody really knows the best way to handle that. So that's kind of one of those things that I have to think about. Now, the everyday layman doesn't have to think about that. And a lot of times the everyday in-house customer, our clients don't have to think about that. They're looking for desired results, and they need answers now, which is the age-old thing. It's why there are companies that do what we do. But it's a thing that I think about, and that gives us a little bit of hesitation, I think. But I feel like 12 months from now, we'll all be that much further along and it'll be more accepted. And we've got to address that challenge before we can really move forward.
So for the folks that work for you, what has their level of enthusiasm or engagement been on ready to utilize these tools?
Yeah. There's a difference between the field landman and our employee base. I mean, we're an organization that we have employees. We've got 50 employees across our organization, project managers, leadership pipeline, land administration folks, accountants, billing clerks, HR. All those things are pretty big. They have different applications. We've been pretty deliberate about those baby steps. How can you save an hour a day? Because really the fact is everybody's maxed out at the company level, within our organization. It's like, God, if I can get an hour a week, that's great. And then, so what we started to do is show how they can gain that hour, and then that turns into 2 hours. And now, man, we've seen like big time momentum over the last 2 months. Khalil's been a big part of helping us really initiate that and trying to take some of those, build practical applications to a single user's day. And that starts to build momentum. With our contractor base, the field landman, we have to be careful. As a service provider, we've got employee contractor relationships, right? Those things are important. I can't really, technically, the Department of Labor says I can't provide a landman the tools to do their job. It's like you don't hire a plumber and give them all the plumbing tools they need to do their job. No, they're a plumber. They're responsible for those tools. If I'm to give them all their things, that's an employee. So that's a whole nother factor that nobody really talks about. And rolling out these tools is somebody's always on the hook. And, it's a significant thing. We went through this labor scenario in the brokerage business, 8-10 years ago, where you had people showing up in your office and you had 200 landmen in a building, and it was great, but you're paying them as independent contractors. The IRS says that's an employee, and it bankrupts companies. So those are the kind of the practical challenges that we're seeing. But within our employee base, man, you can really get behind it and drive enthusiasm, and we're seeing that, and it's going to make us a better company. I think it's making other companies better as well. But yeah, that's a tough question, man. I can go deep dive on the things that are kind of the realities behind it, but they're things that somebody has to think about, and they're the challenges to rolling out, this type of product in the field land profession.
So Khalil, what kind of tools or things that you guys are working on, or what are some of the stuff that you've rolled out or introduced?
Yeah. So, man, there's so many different tools out there, obviously. I don't know what your experience is, Jerris, but from my experience on the professional side, as a general LLM, Anthropic's Claude seems to be the most user-friendly and gives the best outputs. Is that what you're seeing?
Somebody posted on this on LinkedIn yesterday, and I kind of bore my soul a little bit in a comment. I spend a lot of time bouncing between various tools, and I spend a lot of time stressing over the fact on how much time I spend bouncing around those tools. Like, I'm always trying to find what is the one that I'm going to commit to. And I don't commit to any one particular one for very long, but Claude is up there towards the top of the list. I do like it a lot. It's one of the ones I do have like a pro subscription on and use quite a bit.
Yeah. I just find that it is, once you get into the workflow with it, it seems to be the most user-friendly, organized, all that kind of stuff from my standpoint. And then the outputs are really great. They're always introducing new features that tend to suit the professional more than like a consumer. So that's what I have been recommending to a lot of people. I work with other tools as well, but I tend to lean towards Claude, and that's what we're going with. Another thing, my perspective, and it mirrors Brent's, but you mentioned like the novelty of AI, and it runs out really quickly until the next model comes out and you can do this new thing or whatever, right? But I always think that you have to think about what the constraint is in both the business, but also each individual or department. And you have to think about how you can eliminate the constraint. And I don't know if you're familiar with Eli Goldratt's The Goal, wonderful book. It's a manufacturing book. But if you can take those same principles that you see in The Goal and apply it to what you're doing in your current workflow, as a professional, as a business owner, wherever you are, then you're going to be able to implement AI in a really great way, because you're going to be able to identify your constraint. You're going to be able to exploit that constraint at a very low cost with AI. And then you can elevate the constraint and add resources if you need to. But what's required with that, and when I tell this to every knowledge worker, is most knowledge workers, white collar roles, most of their data is actually just in their head and it's in their conversations. It's not in a spreadsheet. It's not, wherever. And so if you can record your meetings, if you can get transcripts of the meetings you have, that's data, and it's raw data, but that's enough for AI if you can just have that raw data. And so having a tool that you can easily transcribe and have transcriptions is really where you're going to be able to leverage that data with AI in really cool ways. So that's a little bit of what I recommend.
Yeah. I love that you brought up the goal. I've suggested that to a few people as well, in some of the conversations, especially early on, because the illustration that it gives on the workflow that is there, there's a section of the book to where they're trying to figure out where is the major bottleneck. And there's an instance when the biggest bottleneck in the entire manufacturing zone is a robot. And it's because they weren't using it effectively and they didn't know how to tee things up beforehand to get the greatest efficiency out of what that robot was going to be able to contribute. And when they did the work and they spent the time beforehand to prep on how are we going to utilize this cutting edge tool, that's when they were really able to witness the exponential gains that technology was able to offer. But before then, it was just a cool photo op for the factory to be able to show, but it was actually causing more problems than it was creating solutions.
Yeah. It's a great book. It's an easy read. It's a novel, but it's a business book. So it's like you're learning a lot, but it's also like really easy to read. So I highly recommend it to anybody. And I think that for anyone, it's about a manufacturing factory, but really most business problems are manufacturing problems if you think about it. We all have an assembly line and a workflow of pipeline. And then the more you can think about your work in that sense, from a business perspective and from an individual perspective, you're just going through workflows. That's when you're going to be able to identify, okay, where in the workflow is my bottleneck? There's a weakest link somewhere in the chain. That's what I probably need to work on. And that's how people should be implementing AI. Find your pains. Don't, we can do this new cool thing. Okay, great. You're just adding complexity. How can you find where the pains are? And that's where you should be looking to implement AI.
For us, that's been the big process for us. There was all this flash of the new thing. Oh, it's going to do all our run sheets. It's going to do all that. And that's fine. There'll be a time to implement that. But, how can we address the pains? I think Khalil refers to it as constraint-based thinking.
Yeah.
And
theory of constraints.
Yeah. That's the way that we've gone about it. And I think that's probably the best way. And to your analogy, your reference to the robot being the constraint, the fact is the robot is what's going to advance that company. Even though it's a constraint at first, it's the step into the unknown. It's like, all right, we're going to do these things. And almost, I think about that a lot as a leader. We have these initiatives and things that we need to do to make our company better. Rolling out is often very difficult. And oftentimes you don't get immediate results. Your results are, a year later, because, you have to push things out. You have to to a certain extent, force things to be in the workflow. And then inevitably you're going to get better. And then you see the returns. And I think we're probably in that season in the land business where there are resources, there are tools. You have to just put them in the hands, right? And they'll get better with that hammer, right? And then ultimately you're going to progress and we'll start to see some of that change. It's a flywheel, it's a snowball, it's all the things that you hear referred to in business, but that's what we're starting to see. And I think that's the way it's going to progress.
One of the pitfalls that I think I have been seeing on that, though, is companies, especially public companies, larger companies, they want to be very eager to display internally and externally that they're taking advantage of AI. And just painting a broad brush, CEOs want to be able to stand up and say, yes, we've empowered all of our employees to use AI. And behind the scenes, the CEO is saying, everybody needs to be doing this. The CEO may or may not actually understand what AI is and how it works for what it does. in many situations, it's, well, you already have Copilot, so what's the problem? And like, to use the hammer analogy, if you show up at work one day or yeah, there's a hammer on your desk and you're just told to use it, but nobody's actually shown you how to use it or how to get the greatest utility out of it. I think that's a pretty big pitfall that's happening right now, is that there's encouragement internally in large companies or organizations where they're being told, you have this tool, why aren't you using it, or you need to be using it? And the employees are saying, well, no one has ever shown us how to use it or what it's supposed to do or what are we supposed to expect out of it. And the leadership may or may not know how to communicate that. And so there's like just a circular pattern of
Failure.
ineffectiveness. Yeah, failure. I mean, that's the real thing, is what it is. And so I think there is like a need or probably a growing demand of people who want to be able to demonstrate and show this is how you use these tools to their greatest efficacy. There's probably a market for that already, and a market that'll grow of being able to say, yes, you have these tools, let me show you how to use them and to get some true gains out of them.
Yeah. That's probably a good segue. And I think we spent a lot of time talking about that. And it's a large part of like our goal. One of our goals for this year is take actionable, repeatable steps, start initiatives to address the one thing, and then you build from that, but then cascade that down through your organization. And I think that's where a lot of leaders fail with, hey, do this thing, but they don't execute on the training. Let's talk about that. And so, for example, I'm a landman. I'm a field landman, and I need to, I'm working on a divestiture project, and I'm responsible for reviewing 100 or 1,000 documents for consent to assign. Right? What's the steps? How do you go about taking your $19.95 or your $20 a month Claude subscription and actually building a tool that allows you as an individual user, as a person, to take these 100 documents and analyze them for this language? Like, Jerris, what would the steps be for someone to do a basic thing like that? We're not talking about building an app that does all the things. It's just like, hey, I need help reading these documents and I got to do it quick.
Yeah. So the scalability is a big hurdle. But it shouldn't be a hurdle that stops people. I think there are enterprise type services and tools that are out there that could process the 1,000 documents for you. That's obviously going to cost a lot of money, and it may even take some time to build out to make that feasible to be able to do. So I'll stick with your example of one individual. How is one individual going to make this work better for them? And it's going to look and feel like a very manual process, but at the end of the day, your goal is to reduce keystrokes. Every keystroke that you make on your computer, your laptop, or whatever takes a fragment of time. And if you can reduce the number of keystrokes that you are doing, then that is reducing the amount of time that you're spending on that particular project. So for an individual who is starting off with a free or basic subscription to Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever it is, that process is going to be something as manual as, I'm going to take that document, upload it, I'm going to queue a prompt to it, and I'm going to let it spit out the results. I'm going to look at what those results are. If I like what the results are, then I know that my prompt is working. If I don't like what the results are, then I know I need to refine that prompt until it's spitting out an output that I can use repeatedly over and over again. And then at that point, it's generating the output that I need. And if I'm satisfied with that repeated output, then it becomes something as easy as copying that output and pasting it into Excel or whatever document that's going to be, and then repeating it. Now, what I just described sounds like a very manual thing. And there may be people that are going, well, I could read that faster and just type it in. I would argue that in the beginning, for the first 10, 15, maybe 20 documents, it will feel like that you could have just read it faster and then input it. But once you get into a rhythm of uploading, it's analyzing, I'm verifying, copying, pasting, you're going to see that stuff is going to fly pretty fast. I did an experiment not too long ago where I was doing a similar process like that with lease analysis, and they were all different types of lease forms. And it took me, a couple of hours to dial in the prompt that I was using inside the tool and the output that it was getting. But eventually I got it to where it was analyzing all the provisions that I wanted it to do, and it was exhibiting that information in a row, a table row. And I could copy that row and paste it directly into Excel. Once I got dialed in, I was churning out oil and gas leases under 2 minutes. I was doing a full lease review. I was very much in the middle of it. I was directing, I was guiding every step of the way, but I was cranking out oil and gas lease analysis reviews in under 2 minutes per lease. That is a massive, massive time savings over the course of a large project.
Yeah. And I think that a really important, what you're saying is exactly spot on. And I think a really good perspective that people should take, and that field landmen should take, that we're using this analogy, is the AI is an intern. It's an infinitely knowledgeable intern, but the intern is only going to be able to do what you want to do as well as you describe what you want to do. It's relying on your context. And as soon as it gets good, it doesn't need your help anymore, right? And so just like the intern, imagine they're coming along with you. You're going to tell them what you want to do, and then you're going to say, come back when you're done. And then you're going to have to really spend time making sure that all of that work is done right. And as you continue to give it the same task, that intern the same task over and over, you're verifying less, you're reviewing less, until the point where you have confidence that that intern knows how to do the task that you gave it. And then as it goes, okay, I trust you to go do that, get it, come back, okay, great, thank you so much. And then you give it the next task and the next task. Because if you treat it like an intern, your intern's only going to be as good as the training you provided, the context you provided. So.
Yeah. And that setup phase is going to feel painfully slow.
Yes.
And it might even be like internally frustrating. It's like, why don't you know this? But it's worth the time and investment to make sure that the intern or the bot knows how to do it correctly. And once you've spent that time and effort, it's no longer the bottleneck, right? Now it's an efficiency builder.
Yeah. And then, as an individual user, now you've got that as your baseline knowledge of how to do that. And then you progress like, oh, okay, now I can do that. Now let me maybe use another tool to build me an app that can streamline that workflow, right? And you can, systematically, brick by brick, build a great product and really get a workflow that you can cascade to your team, that you can use to be a multiplier for yourself. I think that's the process. And I think that's what we're really trying to do. And that's what we encourage, all the way down to our crew chiefs on our projects, folks that we're working with, like, hey, these are capabilities. And that's what I think as an industry, we need to evidence. I think we need to go through these workflows, build these things and be vocal about it. Hey, this is what I'm able to do. It was clunky, but man, eventually I got here. And then that's just the seed for thought, a seed for innovation. And I think that's when we really get you up with the hammer. And I think, I know one of the challenges that, just kind of to shift a little bit, but it's a great transition. One of the challenges that we're having, we're a software development company. We develop our own land system. We use our land system as part of our workflow. We run our entire business front to back. Kudu is our product. It's what we use at Dudley Land Company. For us, it's our sauce. It's consistent process, consistent organization of information, consistent workflow, streamlined workflow. We do a lot of work with a few amount of people administering that work. But the challenge is, how do we plug that in? Or how do we plug AI into our system in a way that we can start taking those individual wins and then bring it in at an enterprise level so that it's set up, it's predetermined, and my user doesn't have to know how to build that lease analysis tool. The tool is built into the system. So if they're negotiating their lease, they're being a great landman, they build their contract in the system, like they're organizing that data, they're bringing it through the workflow that we've built, that's organized and established. How are you starting to see some of these data companies? Obviously your Quorums, your P2s, your Inverse, they got infinite amount of development capital. Are we starting to see some of those resources and tools being plugged into those systems? Or Do you feel like we're experiencing like some of these organizations are so big that it takes a long time to move that ship? Like, how are we seeing that? Or you have any exposure to that, Jerris, in your work?
I think they're all working on it. Some of them had begun to publicly talk about it and had begun to publicly display it. But much like you've expressed in this call, Brent, I think the big companies are being methodical with it. They want to make sure that what they push out there is going to work, and it's going to work with an exceptionally high level of accuracy, because they can't take the risk that they push a tool that only kind of sort of works some of the time, and then their customers lose confidence in the entire software suite, because as human beings, we're extremely judgmental, right? Like, even on the
Tell me
AI
about it.
front, even on the AI front, like I still hear people saying, well, I'm not going to use ChatGPT because 2.5 years ago, an attorney used it and it cited false cases, right? Like, can that still happen? Yes, but is that likely going to happen? Not as likely today as that once was. But we have very short memories on the good things and really long memories on the bad things. So I think those companies, they all have to be working on it, right? Like, there's no way they're not working on it. I think also the major operators are all working on their own tools and things internally. And so they're going to be reluctant to take something from the outside when they know that they have the resources to build it inside themselves. But I think like 2025 was a year of people with pioneering tools that were out there to show that it could be done. And there's several, you've already mentioned it, half a dozen or so title tools that have come to you to display. That number will likely increase somewhat in 2026, but we'll begin to see a lot of that competition that's happening with these tools, both of pioneering grassroots efforts as well as the existing software suites saying, yes, we have AI capabilities, and yes, it works. And, we're excited to show you how well that works. But, going back earlier to an earlier point of the perceptions and the thought processes of audience members and the presentations, in the beginning, it was the invitation to people of, please just try it. And now I find myself saying a lot like, okay, let's put on the brakes a little bit. Like, I know I told you to go out and try it, and I know I told you were going to be excited, and that's happened. But now we've got to be patient a little bit. We got to be patient to let the technology to catch up to our dreams.
Yeah. It's reasonable expectations, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I've got a question. So you mentioned all these tools are coming out there. Companies are coming out with AI tools that are very specific for specific use cases. Do you think it's better for a company to focus their energy and resources on adopting these specific tools for their employees, or is it better for them to focus on general tools like a Claude or ChatGPT or whatever it is, and training on how to use those? What direction do you think companies should go with their employees, specifics or general?
Well, I think that's going to be a case by case basis, and I know that sounds like a cop out, but
No,
larger companies are. Larger companies are obviously going to have more resources to be able to build and customize. But I also don't want to forget about the training aspect that was just talked about, because that's going to be pretty critical. Even if a company builds the greatest tool that they have, if they don't give proper training for it, it's not going to be very useful. It's just going to depend, I think. I think a small individual may do better subscribing to a niche or domain-centric tool that they know how to utilize and is going to help them out, as long as they have confidence that that tool is going to continue to evolve as long as the larger LLMs evolve. I think a mid-sized company is probably going to have, a hybrid approach to where they are utilizing some general LLM stuff, but they're also taking on some customization things. Big companies are likely going to want to just develop everything internally. And it's hard for me to comment on that because I don't know the brains that are going to develop it. And I don't know the right management or leadership that is going to roll it out with enthusiasm and encouragement. And I don't know what kind of training that they're going to have to be able to get the greatest utility from it.
Yeah.
those are all the challenges, right? And that's why some of these are going to succeed and some are going to fail. And, that's the biggest thing we have to tackle. I think it's important, like we're in this season of use and understanding of this technology to make sure your people are generalist, right? I may not be an expert in using, AI or LLM, but man, I can get around it, and if I can get around it, then you can train. It's like if the training wheels are off, at least at a minimum, well, man, then you can start teaching someone to jump and pedal real fast and do those things. And so I think that's what's still important. It's what you've been really good about doing is just, hey, use this. And now we're pumping the brakes. Like, okay, son, we're not going to do the jump yet. Let's get the turns.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately that's where I think we need to be. And I think that's how we're going to be successful. And, man, we could go on for a long, long time, Jerris, but we're almost an hour in. Anything in particular you just want to leave people with? Any parting words of wisdom? Anything like that? How can people reach you if they want to learn more, talk to you more, or maybe get your help with them internally,
Sure.
give some guidance?
Sure. I love helping people out. I love teaching and speaking and educating about these things, both in a public venue as well as, the private venue. So people should feel free to reach out to me anytime and ask for assistance. LinkedIn is a really easy way to reach me. You can also email me at jerris@realdeallandman.com. That's another way people can get in touch with me. A thought that's been turning through my mind a lot is during this conversation, and I hope we've addressed it. But there's a need of having and taking baby steps, even in something that's moving so fast, so quickly, and evolving and gaining all these huge grounds on capabilities. But taking baby steps towards it, I think is going to be helpful for most people. And the first baby step, I think, was having an open mind, just being willing to hear about what is happening and what could be done and maybe trying it a little bit. And I think the second baby step is having patience or reasonable expectations and understanding that this is a journey. This is not an overnight thing that is going to solve all your problems tomorrow. It's going to take some time, but I also think that roadmap is going to come to fruition much faster than what people realize. It's probably not going to happen as fast as they want, but we are going to go along. And this is a journey that's going to continue. And I'm hopeful people will be patient with it. I'm hoping they'll continue to use it and try it. And I'm hoping that they will encourage people that they work with or people that they work around to also try it, but be patient and take baby steps with it. And the land profession in general is going to be really exciting. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to change. There's going to be a lot of solutions that come about. There's also going to be some new problems that pop up. But I'm excited that I'm alive to get to be part of it and to talk about it and hopefully help some people understand it better.
That's right. Awesome. Well, Jerris, thanks for joining us, man. Really appreciate your time, buddy.
Absolutely.
Jerris.
Thank you so much.
Okay, see ya.
Enjoyed today's topic? Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Learn more at dudley-land.com. See you next episode.